everyone. Welcome to this edition of the Human School's Curation Corner. Just one part of our learning journey here at the Human School. I'm Randy.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Chad.
All right. In each episode, we engage in brief conversations that are focused on a specific resource. First, we'll summarize the author's ideas, and then we'll make connections to our own experiences. And finally, we'll leave you with some insights that further learning here at the Human School. In today's episode, we're chatting about the article, Play is Not a Stupid Waste of Time by Lenore Skenazy. I love the words in there, stupid waste of time. That's a beautiful string of words. If you happen to be interested in today's article, you can find a link below this video at thehuman.school. All right, so what is Lenore telling us? She's basically telling us that as human beings, we are drawn to play. Play is vital for our humanity. And with this idea of play, we need to be objectors and we need to challenge the social norm that if something isn't tough and unpleasant and boring, it has no value. And that's oftentimes the way that we approach this idea of play. But we also learn a lot through play, and that for our young people, it's important that when they're playing, that they exercise their own agency and that they can come up with things to do without an adult. Like, that's really important. And she also says something, and I love this quote, that there are negative impacts to situations that don't have enough play. And here's the quote. Without enough of it, kids get anxious, out of shape, depressed, lonely, bored, desperate, and dumb. Again, she doesn't shy away from sort of jarring words, does she? All right. So what's my connection? So as I read this article, I was wondering about this idea of who gets to decide what play is. And I think for me, the answer is the person that's doing the play. The adult doesn't get to decide what play is to the kid. The kid gets to decide what's play through the eyes of the player, the person who's doing the playing, with no adult intervention. Remember, in the case of young people playing, it's no adult intervention. And of course, unless there's a safety issue, then of course we would intervene in that. But I think this idea of kids get to decide what's play. It's their agency, it's their ownership. And it's them being human. It's something that is vital to their own humanity, and they need to have the wide guardrails to determine what that is.
So when I was in grad school, I took a class that looked at play as part of a learning experience. And I remember we watched this movie called Panette. It's a French film. And it looks at how this child who has lost her mother at the beginning of the movie uses play as a way to try to understand grief and loss, interacting with friends, using her imagination. And I remember thinking at the time how fascinating it was that play had a function. And now, as a mom with a 2-year-old, I watch my son all the time and how so much of what his day-to-day life is shows up in how he plays. So things as simple as taking his toy cars and putting them in a line and saying that they're waiting at a stoplight. Or I got a flat tire, I think like 6 months ago now, and he still talks about it. He still has all of his cars having a flat tire and they have to fix them. And, everything he sees and learns and hears gets integrated in how he plays. And if I don't get involved other than doing what he asks of me, it's so interesting to just watch him make sense of it and pull in things that I didn't even notice that he notices or pays attention to. And that it's a way of him understanding the world and learning. But also, like Randy said, that freedom to make those decisions without telling him what to do or telling him how to play with a toy, just letting him go is just really cool to watch.
Well, and it reminds me, Rachel, having, 2 boys of my own, that unstructured play is a thing before school, and it's school that changes this dynamic, right? I mean, it's school that changes fundamentally how we interact with others because it's overly structured. Thinking about the places in a school day where you would say most schools have at least an opportunity for unstructured play might happen during recess time or during before and after school care. And yet, even in those places, they've become incredibly structured with adults leading games or adults intervening when there's conflict. And so that leads me to my kind of connection here is that social play, it's how as learners we learn to work and get along with one another. And that when we create these structures for play and structures for learning and structures for resolving conflict, we're denying the learners themselves the opportunity to develop those skills in meaningful and authentic and deeply personal ways. So as adults, we are so quick to intervene and tell people what they need to do, as opposed to allowing them to understand what is necessary. And so I wonder a lot in the last 20 years as we've become so much more overly structured, and I think I want to be very fair that I think that the intentions of this are good. I think the intentions for people to feel safe and the intentions for people to feel, again, I'll just use feel safe. It's really, really good. But I wonder about the conflict in the world around us, and that because we don't have an adult telling us what's right and wrong, if that's a skill that people have lost over time. I mean, that's a big ask, and I'm not entirely sure I love that theory, but I do wonder quite a bit as, adults, we come in and we rescue kids from conflict. And now we're surprised that as adults, people don't know how to conflict well.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that that's a great point. It's a wonder that I often have too. And I also think that it's just really funny is the wrong word, but fascinating. I value the article so much. And I remember that feeling in grad class of like, oh, play has a purpose. But at the same time, I think that it's really funny that we feel like it has to have one. Like, it's interesting that it does. It's interesting that it has a psychological impact and an impact on learning. But when she talks about the Puritan work ethic, I keep thinking I kept thinking as I was reading the article, is even the article itself, us justifying play as function, part of that Puritan work ethic, that like we think it has to have a reason and a value in order for us to put time and energy into it. And so it's almost at odds with itself, saying like, play has a purpose, play has a value. Look, it's a learning opportunity. Oh, okay, now it's all right. As opposed to just letting it be, is just really, it gives me pause. And, it's a little bit of like a chicken before the egg conversation. But it's something that I kept thinking about as I was reading, that we have to like validate it and then it becomes okay.
Well, what I love about that, Rachel, was that, my big connection to our work, and it should come as no surprise that the one of the four compass points that I connect with the most is that of objector. And I objected to something very similar, which is that people see unstructured play as a waste of time and not valuable. And it's probably because it can't be assessed and it's not directly connected to achievement, right? It's two fundamental parts of our systems is that if you can't assess it and it's not connected to achievement, then why do it? And
Joke's on you. There are standards for play now.
Okay, well, there we go. That's a whole nother conversation about whether those standards are good for this or not. Maybe they are. I don't have a ton of familiarity there, but and so I think that the part that I object to when we talk about play is that idea that play is a waste of time and it's not valuable. And as we know, value is in the eye of the beholder, for lack of a better word. So that's my big connection to our work, is like, how do we object to this idea, and how do we help design where there is unstructured play within instruction, within more playground time, or how we utilize that before and after school time with kids? Like, how do we again design for the unstructure of it and create space for kids to develop those skills, in ways that make sense for them?
I love chatting with you too, because you always push my thinking, and I'm going to push this conversation into that realm of the future too, because I think that the pretty good consensus out there is that as we go into the future, that we really need to focus on more of the things that make us human. And so play is one of those things that makes us human. And I think that as we go into the future and we want to highlight more of the things that are more human, like empathy, connection, negotiation in playful experiences, self-awareness, and even this idea that I'm not just in my own world, I'm in a world that is impacting a larger world. I'm a small part of a larger piece. And I think that, play is important for young people to develop the skills that they're going to need to thrive in the future. So I'm trying to make that connection of, let's think about the future and what are those things that we are going to have to highlight, and how can this idea of play really help our kids develop them, even when they're not easily measurable, like you had mentioned.
I had really two questions as we were having this conversation. And the first is, as adults, how do we permit ourselves time for unstructured play? Are we restless? What does it feel like to be bored? These are things that I think about all the time. I have this pressure where if all of a sudden there's like nothing on my calendar, and there's nothing to do, and my boys are doing their own thing, and my wife is doing her thing, and I'm like, okay, like what do I do right now? And so I think the two questions I would have for us, and that we ask, those who are out there, is, how do you design for or allow space for your own play? And then secondly, how do you do that for others? So where can you permit others to play, whether it's through your leadership capacity, whether it's in your leadership capacity within your own classroom or with your own family? Because I do believe that we have lost the art of unstructured play collectively.
Yeah, I make the connection to, I think I lost my thought.
This is an example of unstructured play. We are playing with ideas.
Oh, I know what the thought was. So we're being totally human here. But I think from your comment, Chad, we're so obsessed as a society around productivity. Like, let's make things more and more efficient in our lives. And then when we get to the point where, my God, I'm not feeling so productive, or I could be more, I could just ratchet it up a little bit more, that sort of self-abuse and that like discomfort with, like, it's okay to be bored. And I heard something the other day. It was a quote about, I'll give you the essence of it. It was basically like, it's okay to feel bored, because that's when your imagination begins to work in the background and you're sort of solving all those things that are perplexing you at the moment. So a boredom or a time of rest and relaxation is okay. And in our society, though, that's so focused on this idea of, efficiency and productivity, like we can kind of get out of hand.
Well, I also wonder if that's why, like for me, driving in the car or shower, or in the morning in the shower, some of my best and wildest and craziest thoughts and ideas happen because there is inherently a structure to those activities. There's defined beginning and the end, but there's not the distraction in theory of like those other things. I don't know if that's true, but I know for me personally, there's something about those two spaces for me where I can just be free and I don't have the other things happening. I'm just kind of playing with those ideas.
Yeah. There's probably research on that too.
Maybe someone
if anybody out there has it, yes, you can share it with us. So, all right. Shall we wrap it up? We're going to wrap it up. All right. Our summary of our insights from our conversation today around play. Play is important for our young people to develop the skills that they'll need to thrive in the future. Things like empathy, connection, negotiation, self-awareness, and an emergent mindset. Second, play is a keystone practice in learning. It is part of learning and not separate from it. And finally, play is learning, period. And when we're able to bring our own structures to play, it's even more meaningful. All right. Thanks for learning alongside us in this episode of the Human Schools Curation Corner. Chad and Rachel, always love chatting with you and learning with you. And hope others will join us in today's conversation by visiting the Learning in Public Hub at thehuman.school or visiting our YouTube channel. The Human School, by placing humanity at the center of all design, the Human School seeks to share an evolving story of learning and its impact on the world. And we can't wait to hear how you are intentionally placing humanity at the center. For additional resources, visit thehuman.school and the Learning in Public Hub and join a community that's committed to placing humanity at the center of all design. All right, that's it. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.